says that Erik ten Hag, the word is talking himself out of a job. Also, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has reportedly been in talks with George Mendes, the super agent, about transfers this summer. What players could that entail? We're also going to take a look at what next. What next? What if some of these journalists, some of you, get what you want and Ten Hag is removed? What next? Who would the next manager be? And we're going to have a look at the slim pickings there and whether it would be a better alternative or not. Also, Mason Greenwood has been speaking about his future well, I suppose he has and he hasn't. But again, people are asking that question. I would say maybe we should bring Palestri back because he scored a very good goal today as well in the Spanish league for a team that's worse than the one that Greenwood plays for. So maybe he should be the star boy coming back as well. We'll talk about that. Lots to get into on the show as well. We'll also go through the odds on the next Manchester United manager so you can see that who are currently the favourites for that. Of course, some people on a Sunday lose brain cells and become very thick. So somebody said this morning you were talking about how Wilcox backs Ten Hag, and then today you're talking this evening you're talking about Ten Hag sacking himself. Little history lesson: not every show we do is about what we say. It's a response to others. This was on Sky this lunchtime from Melissa Reddy that the word is Ten Hag is sacking himself, and we react to the news. Okay, so that's the clarity on the news this morning, that Jason Wilcox is very happy with Ten Hag and wants to help him out. So tonight we're talking about a news story from Sky, from Melissa Reddy, that Ten Hag is sacking himself according to people she spoke to. So we're reacting to that news, okay? Just some people don't understand it. I know most of you do, but some people don't. Before we get into all of that, Dreamy, thank you very much for your super chat. We're sponsored by BoohooMan on the show, which means you're going to get a bit of trivia. I think some of you are going to struggle with this on a Sunday because, like I say, a lot of people seem to lose brain cells. Today's show is brought to you by BoohooMan. You can get 10% off, an extra 10% on any discount they've got across the website with the code Goldbridge. Scan the QR code or go through the link in the description. I'm wearing my BoohooMan hoodie. It's a Sunday night. I feel like chilling. But they've got gym wear, five-a-side wear, the lot wear, outside wear, shorts, t-shirts, summer, sunny day for some of you today. Check it out with BoohooMan. Already fantastic discounts. You can get an extra 10% off your discount with the code Goldbridge as well. And as BoohooMan always do, they've given us a bit of trivia for you here. So can you guess this player? I think you should get it, but some of you chuff monsters might not. I was born on June the 30th, 1965. I started my career at Middlesbrough, but moved to United in 1989. During my time at United, I played 317 games and I scored 12 goals. I formed a formidable defensive partnership with Steve Bruce. Come on. For United, I won the Premier League 4 times, the FA Cup 3 times, the League Cup and the European Cup Winners' Cup. I left United in 98 to rejoin Middlesbrough, where I was managed by Brian Robson, who I'd played with at United. I also played 22 times for England during my career, including right back, even though I was a centre back. Because anybody got it in the chat. Pallister, lovely stuff. My faith is restored that some of you've got that. Fantastic. It's not Nanny, Nick P. Big shout out to BoohooMan. We'll leave that up. Scan the QR code with your camera phone. You can get some lovely clothing like this at very reasonable prices with a discount of 10% as well with Goldbridge. Dreamy says, I've got a stat for you. Ten Hag has not lost to any of the top 9 teams at home besides Man City. Well, look, lots to get into on the show. Let's get into it. We're taking your questions as always as well. But I suppose the big thing I wanted to talk about tonight is because the Sunday show is the flagship show of the United Stand. Try and say that quickly. Flagship. So the United Stand started off coming up for 10 years ago as a once a week show at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night. Once a week we used to do on an 8 o'clock show on a Sunday, talking about the weekend and what had happened and the week ahead. Kev was on it. It was a long time ago. So the 8 o'clock show to me is always... I will always have an attachment to the Sunday night show. And I like to sort of try and replicate that in the sense that let's just talk about things in a little bit more, what's the word, projective, not reminiscent way, but sort of like a little bit, look, what's the future? What next? I suppose it says that on the thumbnail. What next? INEOS have got a massive decision to make. Obviously, a lot of people are saying sack the manager. Obviously, a lot more are saying back the manager, the press are not behind him. And I want to sort of just, I struggle with the whole mantra of sack the manager, get rid of him, it's not acceptable. And then you ask these people what they want to do. I don't care as long as he gets sacked. And you sort of like go, do you realise we're walking into something worse? I mean, for example, there are people on social media, there's people I know who for 4 or 5 weeks have been saying, let's get De Zerbi. He got spanked again today. I mean, do you realise it will cost 20 million to get De Zerbi? And he's performing terribly. I mean, but people were telling us De Zerbi's the guy to go and get. He's the hipster coach, and he clearly isn't. And this is what I mean. Sometimes you take a beat, you wait a month, and the manager you thought was the guy ain't the guy. And then you're like, you've made a mistake if you'd gone for him. So I think INEOS have got a massive decision to make here. And what do they do? So I want to go through who the betting odds are for the manager, and also just sort of get a bit of interaction from you as to what it is you want to do, because the Ten Hag out crew are very, very good at screaming and shouting and professing and saying, I want the manager out, but you're not very good at giving us alternatives. So I'd like to go through that and also throw the show towards what INEOS are going to do and what a big decision it is. Now, Ten Hag sacking himself is really, I disagree with this. But Melissa Reddy is a respected journalist. She's been on the United stand. She goes on tour with United. She's one of Sky Sports News' main reporters. Whatever you think about that is for you personally. But when she is sat on a show on Sky Sports on a Sunday saying the word is that Ten Hag is sacking himself, I think that's quite a big statement. And we all make statements, and there has to be accountability for those statements. You can't just throw it out there. So I don't know what Melissa Reddy's source is, and I don't know what Melissa Reddy's motivation is behind that. But Ten Hag sacking himself, from what she was saying, sounds to me like it's some of the comments he's coming out with publicly. And I think it's more to do with the things like last night where he was saying we're one of the most dynamic, entertaining teams in the Premier League. Those sort of comments might be sort of ridiculing himself and effectively sacking himself. I sort of disagree with that in the sense that Sir Jim Ratcliffe himself was quoted as saying he wants a manager that's glass half full. He doesn't want a negative manager. I mean, he actually said I can't believe that people think or thought a month ago that we might give Mourinho the job. When you listen to what Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said about Mourinho in the past, he won't go anywhere near him. He's publicly said Mourinho was negative and destroyed the confidence of Luke Shaw. And that's our owner. So he ain't going to go anywhere near. And this is what I mean. I think homework is so important. Whether it's homework for school, homework for an exam, whatever, doing your homework is really important because it prevents you being an idiot. And I know that's a harsh lesson in life, but if you don't do your homework, you're going to get found out by the people who did. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe has spoken openly about negativity and Mourinho and wanting managers that are positive and project positivity and a strong belief. So I sort of disagree with Ten Hag might be sacking himself with coming out with positive messages at a time where the club is on its knees. We don't have a CEO. We don't have a director of football. And Ten Hag is basically running the club on his own as a manager, as the PR piece. And he is trying to project positivity, which is seen by you, and some of you ridicule it, but it also be seen by the players who he's trying to keep up with some very key games to go. So I don't think he's sacking himself. I think he's ridiculing himself to a fan base that doesn't want him in relation to the people that don't want him. And I think he's ridiculing himself to a media that's very vocal that doesn't want him. But I don't think Sir Jim Ratcliffe will be sat there when Ten Hag is trying to be positive, saying he's an idiot. Why is he not being more negative? Why isn't he saying we're shit? I don't actually think Man United, in my experience, would have a problem with Ten Hag trying to convey a positive message. I just think the media are ridiculing it, as they always would do. So I don't know who that's coming from, and I do respect Melissa Reddy, but I don't know where that's coming from. And I don't necessarily think his post-match interviews are sacking Ten Hag. And if anything, it's laughable. We don't have access to the information that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's got or Jason Wilcox has got, in the sense that they get to see behind the curtain. They know what's going on in training. They know what's going on in conversations with Ten Hag. I think when the media are trying to pick up on the fact that Ten Hag might be sacking himself based on post-match press conferences, it's ridiculous. So INEOS are going to look at a post-match press conference and decide to sack him when they can actually have him in a meeting room or watch him, observe him training. They're going to use those sort of things. They're going to use those sort of anecdotes. So look, by all means, ridicule what Ten Hag said yesterday in a press conference. That's fine. That's your perception. That's your opinion. But I genuinely don't think that those things are going to be of any relevance to INEOS. I think they're going to be looking at far more in-depth things. And look, reality is, I don't know what Ten Hag's like as a person, but they will. And if there's something in his personality they like, maybe they keep him. And if there's something in his personality they don't like and the way he deals with things, they'll get rid of him. It won't be based on press conferences, in my opinion. Why can't you accept he's not good enough, says Sule? Your logic is there's no option to let's keep an awful one. Our mental health is draining. Get him gone. Sule, you're a dangerous person who chats shit constantly, and I'm not accepting it. Don't put words in my mouth and don't tell me what my logic is. I put a lot of time into this community, and so does this community. Don't speak for me. Don't tell me what I think. My logic is not there's no one else out there, let's keep him. That's not my logic at all. My logic is that I want to see a different approach. I don't want to see a manager sacked and blamed like we've done 3 or 4 times before. And I actually want to see a clear out of players for the first time in 10 years. That's my logic. Don't twist my words. Don't put those... If you're worried about your mental health, stop pretending people are saying things that they're not saying. Okay? Let's have a real conversation. Why can't we play an under-21 centre-back instead of Casemiro, says John? Well, we did that with Camboire and he made 2 mistakes and people got on his back. So I think we're trying to protect them. Good call not watching City, says JM. Yeah, they're going to win the league. Benoit says, Erik Ten Hag surely must start Mount over Eriksen at this point after spending big. You know, but you can't start Mount yesterday when he's clearly not match fit. I know people want to see Ahmad start, and I get that. But you can't moan at Ten Hag not picking Mount when he's been out for 3 weeks and he's clearly not match fit. I'm sure he would have started him if he'd been fit. I agree. Joe says, nice burner account, Mark. Ten Hag's awful. Oh, mate, don't get me started on that. Just very quickly on that. Oh, my God. Will sent it me and said, have you seen this? Laughing, right? Okay. So this afternoon, Ederson fouled the Forest striker, yeah? And I did a tweet about it. In the replies, people were saying something like, there's no similarity, something like that. So I replied and went, there's no similarity, ... Something like, Ederson leads with his hands, the Forest player leads with his head. There's clearly only one person committing a foul there. Now, people think that's a burner account. No, I wrote it. It's not a burner account. I don't have a burner account. My point was, it's a foul. Ederson has led with his hands. It's a foul. It's not my fault if idiots can't grasp what I'm saying and want to turn it into something else. It's Toxic Sunday, isn't it? But I'll tell you what, the most funny thing is, being told I've got a burner account from burner accounts. Ferguson's toenail or something. Mate, you're not even real. That's not a real account. You're on a burner account saying I've got a burner account. Read the tweet back and understand what I'm saying. It was a foul by Ederson. He led with his hands. The Forest player went with his head. So clearly the foul is committed by Ederson because he's dangerously going with hands when the Forest player's only got his head. It's a penalty, but it's Man City. Mark, better the devil you know, the devil you don't. Ten Hag in, Glazers out, says Jason. How are you? Do you think if Ten Hag was getting better results and safe in his job, would he start going in on the deeper problems in the club, says Luca. Love the community. Long live United stand, says solid break. Almarin Im says crazy. Haven't watched for a while due to work. Erik Ten Hag post-match yesterday was embarrassing, says Luke. Nani, Nick P, we've done that, and we've done those as well. Thank you very much. Lots of love to you from Dublin. Oh, Tony, I'd love to be in Dublin tonight having a pint. Wilcox backing Ten Hag makes me feel there is actually a plan and structure in place for the first time since Sir Alex Ferguson, says Roham. And hi, Mark, just out of curiosity, you said Erik Ten Hag couldn't have done much more yesterday, but do you think he could have started Mount instead of Eriksen? No, Scott, because Mason Mount wasn't fit to start. Look, I would have started Ahmad. The funny thing is, I would have started Ahmad, but Anthony played well and scored. So, am I right or wrong? Ahmad's fit. I would have started Ahmad, but then Anthony played well and scored. But I'm not having a go at Ten Hag for not starting Mount. He's not match fit. You could see that when he came on. He's only just coming back from injury. So I don't think that's a valid point. Remind me to talk about this story that Sir Jim Radcliffe's been in talks with George Mendes, because I've got a list of clients of George Mendes. So we'll go through that a little bit as well. And I want to talk about Greenwood, of course. But look, it's Sunday night. Let's talk about what next. Because Ten Hag might stay, Ten Hag might get sacked. And I'll sit here in front of you and say that, hand on heart, I don't know what's going to happen. I can get passionate about what I want to happen, and you can get passionate about what you want to happen, and God, hallelujah for that. Everybody should be passionate about their opinion, of course. But I don't know what's going to happen with Ten Hag. Sometimes I hear things and I think the club sound like they've got their head screwed on and they're going to keep him. Sometimes I hear things and think, oh my God, they actually are going to get rid of him. So I don't actually know. So it's not like saying let's buy Osman in the summer, because that's not going to happen. It's a waste of a conversation. I don't know what's going to happen. And I suppose that's encouraging for people who want to sack him. And it's encouraging for people who don't, and people on the fence as well. I don't know what's going to happen, and I genuinely don't believe anybody else does either. My hunch is they're going to keep him, and I really hope that happens. But I don't really know how this is going to go. So when we say what next, I think we have to assess the options, and one of the best places to assess the options is by looking at who the favourites are to take the job if Erik Ten Hag is removed. Because then, as a fan, and your individual opinion must never be undermined or ignored if it's a fair opinion. So, you're important. You're important. Like, the club may not have picked Ten Hag over Pochettino because of fans, but they were fully aware that the fan base didn't want Pochettino. And the club should never follow fan opinion exclusively, because we all wanted Ollie and that was a mistake. But they should take it on board, because if you look at the Arnautovic signing, United definitely wanted to sign Arnautovic, and the noise of negativity around Arnautovic did, I know for a fact, stop a deal for Arnautovic. Man United were going to sign Arnautovic, and they turned away from it because of fan opinion. And we also know that Richard Arnold had prepared the return of Mason Greenwood, and they changed their opinion based on public opinion. So people who think that fan opinion's not listened to are idiots, because it is, and your opinion's important. So when you're assessing what you want to think, what you want to happen next, the only thing I would say is that if you've decided you want a change of manager, then please, for the love of God, accept and understand what's going to happen. Because there's only 3 or 4 things that are going to happen, and your fantasy is not going to happen. Like Zidane is not going to happen. Nagelsmann cannot happen. He signed a contract. So you've got to get in the real world. And the real world is that if you're going to sack Ten Hag, you're going to take a risk. Because there's no Mourinho waiting like there was when we got rid of Van Gaal. There's no open goal. Every manager you go for, if you sack Ten Hag, is going to cost you money to sack him and replace him, and is going to be a risk. There's no dead cert. There's not even a close to being that. Every manager we go for is a risk. And you shouldn't not take that risk. All I'm saying is, please accept that every manager that United are favourites to get if Ten Hag goes has a massive warning sign. So, look, I looked at this just before we went live, and the Pallister, says Nigel, you're very late. The top 5 candidates to be Manchester United manager at the moment, across multiple articles that I've read, even bringing in the betting odds, which some agree with, some don't. What I would say about the betting odds is, when it comes to things like this, they're not plucking it from their arse. They do a lot of research. They speak to a lot of people, because it's quite a big market and the bookies don't want to get it wrong. So I have included that. I've also included articles from credible journalists and stuff that have been said over the last 6 weeks. So at the moment, the favourite for the job, and I hope it's a smokescreen, is Southgate. Southgate is still considered to be the favourite to take the job if Ten Hag goes. In joint second favourites, it's Graham Potter and it's Thomas Tuchel. In fourth favourites is De Zerbi, and then you've got some outliers like Amorim and Zidane. So they are quite far out. I don't know why Amorim's not higher with Man United. I don't know what's gone wrong with Amorim. I really thought he would have been a better choice for Liverpool, but obviously they've stepped away from that. Maybe he could become a favourite, but so at the moment, I don't really want. Actually, let's ignore the favourites section. Let's just talk about the candidates. So you've got Southgate, Potter, De Zerbi, Tuchel, and maybe Amorim. Look, honestly, I'll have a conversation with you. It's a no from me. I don't want any of them. I don't want De Zerbi because he's had one good season at Brighton and a very bad one. He's had a lot of injuries. But he's stubborn in the way that he plays, and we haven't got the players to play the way he wants to play either. And I think it's a very big thing to manage Man United compared to Brighton. I just don't see him as a Man United manager, and he's got a release clause. So De Zerbi worries me. Potter, we saw at Chelsea, was absolutely terrible. He couldn't deal with it, and some of the stories coming out from Chelsea when he was in charge are massively concerning, and journalists should probably do their job on that. Southgate, well, the less I say, I have got nothing to say about Southgate. I mean, I would be worried for Crystal Palace if they gave Southgate a job. So why Man United would go with him, I don't know. And Tuchel, look, Tuchel's the best of the lot, but I don't warm to him at all. I said it this morning. I do not warm to Tuchel at all. I think that some of our fans see a guy that's won a Champions League, and they see a foreign coach with, reasonably good technical coaching ability, and they think that he's the saviour. But Tuchel comes, in my opinion, with huge red flags. He causes problems at every club he's at because he wants control, which is contrary to what INEOS want. I don't think he's a great recruiter of talent. I think some of his transfers are terrible, and he wants control of that. He's not very humble. He's a very opinionated person. I would argue toxic to a certain extent when things don't go his way. I don't really like his personality. I think he comes across as quite spiky and arrogant. And it's all right if you're a Mourinho Pep, but you're not. So that worries me as well. And I don't necessarily think he's the guy to be helping the likes of Garnacho and Mainu and any other young player as well. So there's 4 or 5 reasons there why Tuchel to me isn't the right guy. So the worrying thing for me is, and I know Amorim was the other one. Red Devil says pot and kettle. Mate, I'm not trying to manage Man United. So it does sound like me, yeah. But I'm not trying to manage Man United, mate. I'm just doing a community when you're free to leave whenever you go, and you're free, and it's free to watch as well. So I don't know what you're moaning about. You don't need to watch it, and if you want to watch it, it's free. I'm not looking to manage Man United, so you can character assassinate me as much as you want. Absolutely fine about it. But we're talking about the next manager of Manchester United. And yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be a very good manager of Manchester United because I wouldn't sit back and be told what to do by a CEO or a director of football. You're right. I do have strong belief in what I'm saying. You're right. I can be a little bit arrogant at times. Yeah, you're right. I'd be a terrible fit for Manchester United manager. And on top of that, I'd be a shit manager because I'm not as good as Tuchel as a coach. So yeah, if you want to see similarities, fine. I wouldn't be a good fit as Manchester United manager. As for Amorim, he would be the best of the lot if we were going to do anything about it. But I detect there's an issue with Amorim, and I'd love to know what it is, because the West Ham thing fell apart and the Liverpool thing, they walked away. So that would panic me as well. So look, they're your options at the moment. And if you want to go with one of those options, over to you. Talk to me about it. But for me, I don't see anything there. I go, yeah, okay, that's the list. I'll stick with what I've got for a year, because if I stick with what I've got for a year, then it goes wrong. There'll be a better manager market in a year's time. And I don't fancy that. And if you're INEOS, you're walking in with this big placard saying change, change, change. Everything's going to be better now. And if you're INEOS looking at that pool of managers, I'm going, fucking hell, I can't do that. If I do that and it goes wrong, we've just fucked up our start. Whereas I think if they stick with Ten Hag and then change it, or it works, they'll get a lot more credit. What I'm trying to say is, if I'm Sir Jim Radcliffe and I'm looking at those managers that are available, I'm going, huge risk. And if it goes wrong, it will cut the legs off whatever mission we're trying to start. Whereas if I stick with Ten Hag for now, I think a lot of people would understand why I've done it. And if it works, I look really good. And if it doesn't work and I change it, then people will go, well, at least you gave him a chance. I think there's more legs and credibility in sticking with Ten Hag than there is with gambling on some of those people who I think are a massive, massive gamble. But I want to hear from you. And I specifically want to hear from the Ten Hag outers on those options and why you think they're better than Ten Hag. Or is it just throw your toys out the pram, you want a new manager? Because look, every club's got those fans. Real Madrid have got them. They do it with players. They'll boo Ronaldo. They'll boo Casillas. They want a new shiny toy. That's absolutely fine. I think it's petulant, and I don't think it's good for a football club, but I would hope that some of you actually would have the balls or chuff to write a few words about why you want to sack Ten Hag and why one of those managers will put us in a better situation. Because, look, that's what a Sunday night show is all about. Would you be shocked if Ten Hag gets sacked? He deserves another season, says Martin. I'd be disappointed. Nothing shocks me in football. I wouldn't be shocked if Bruno Fernandes went to Saudi Arabia in the summer. He's not going to, but it wouldn't shock me. I think the Saudi money in football over the last 2 years, nothing shocks me about a player leaving anymore. So in management, nothing shocks me. Nothing shocks me. Hypnotic says, I'm Eric Ten Hag in, but these Manu subs have to stop. Look, on that, I don't know whether you watched the morning show. I was shocked with the Manu sub yesterday. But when I watched it again last night, there was an attack from Burnley just before he got subbed, and he was almost running backwards. His legs he looked exhausted. I can't argue with the substitution when a player's exhausted. And I think Manu's legs had gone. I think he was absolutely exhausted. So I think that's why it was done. Amorim was rejected by Liverpool because he wanted more transfer control. So it would be a problem with INEOS as well. If that's true, Abhijit, then yeah, I'll take your word on it. Tuchel would be perfect for the Glazers, says Kyle. It doesn't matter what you think, says Paul. Eric Ten Hag in. These broke billionaires ain't got it. Sancho and Greenwood will be back and will be in the mud with these fools in charge. Wake up and don't be fooled. Strong message there. Kim says, every manager has acted out and picked worse, but loyal players as they lost the dressing room. At what point should United start working on itself? Crazy says, how did Sam C know the names of Anthony's kids? I don't know, mate. Why don't you ask him? Be harsh all you want, but Ten Hag staying is the wrong decision. Few of us have standards. Unless I see growth, I sack any manager, says Salai. Well, thank God you're not the CEO. She did say a lot of people want him to succeed, says Fabian. And I completely agreed with Reddy this morning. Fabian, this is a great point. So Melissa Reddy did say that. She did say that a lot of people at the club want Ten Hag to succeed, but the word is he's almost sacking himself at the moment with some of the stuff he's saying. But I disagree with that. I disagree with the fact that what he says publicly is going to get him sacked. But you can make what your mind up of that. Why are you getting attacked tonight, says Parker? Because it's Sunday. I'm an easy target. And people just want to see the world burn. It's fine. I'm used to it. Like 4 weeks ago, we were getting death threats. I can deal with toxicity on Twitter. They do it all the time. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I don't want Ten Hag to be sacked, but I see his situation as untenable, says Nick P. Is there anyone in football behind him or have given him credit for anything in the last year or more? His time is short, says Nick. And how would you feel about Spalletti if United go for him? He did a great job with Napoli and he's very experienced. Matt, we can throw names out, but the problem is the names that we're actually talking about are the names I just mentioned. Southgate, Potter, De Zerbi, Tuchel. It's going to be one of those four. Maybe Amarim's an outlier, but I don't think he is, because United will have seen Liverpool not go for him, and that, also nobody will know Amarim. Like, everybody we're being linked to's got a relationship, haven't they? Potter, Southgate, De Zerbi have all got that sort of Brighton Ashworth connection, and Tuchel, I think, has a connection with. I don't know actually whether Tuchel's got a connection. Maybe it's just he's just gobbing off. He wants the job, but I don't see a Motta or an Amarim like Lafsfield says. I just don't see it, to be honest with you. Don't forget the email talk, says Rolando. It's going to get mentioned on the podcast tomorrow. Because it's a wider conversation, so it will get mentioned. I might try and bring it in towards the end of the show, but it's one of our topics on the podcast tomorrow as well. Patrick Lynch says, do you think INEOS have got time to vet a new coach when no CEO or director of football are in place? Sacking Erik ten Hag now means you could be stuck with someone that could collapse for 18 months, restarting the cycle again. I mean, I want to talk about this Sir Jim Ratcliffe meeting with George Mendes, because I think this is really interesting, if true. But just on that, finally, I think it's worth raising this point. If you bring a new manager in, I don't think you get the clear out we need. And I've said that many times before. But if you bring a new manager in, what if you bring Southgate or Potter in and they say, get Sancho back, and Sancho wants to come back? Is that a good thing? I know for some of you it is, because Player FC still exists around Sancho, but is it a good idea to bring a lad back who basically refused to play for us and was late for training and hasn't performed for 3 years, but a new manager wants to give him another chance? Also, what happens to Martinez? What happens to Højlund? What happens to Mount? What happens to Garnacho? What happens to Anthony? Like, what happens to these players that are very much Ten Hag players if Potter or Southgate or De Zerbi go, they're not my players, I don't want to use them? So not only do you bring a new manager in, you also create that pile that we've spoken about. We've still got Van Gaal players here, we've still got Mourinho players here, we've still got Ollie players here, and they don't fit together. And then you've got a new manager, so a few more Ten Hag players go on. And then the next manager's got Ten Hag players, Ollie players, Mourinho players, maybe still Van Gaal players, wants his own players, and the puzzle that doesn't fit together gets bigger and bigger. One of the big things I think about Man United, and we've spoken about this a lot, is that when you look at someone like Man City or Arsenal, or what Klopp's building with Liverpool, there is a structure and there is a plan, and there are players that have been bought by those managers over a period of time. Arteta's been at Arsenal for what, 4 years? Pep's been at Man City for a long time, and Klopp was at Liverpool for a long time. And what you get with longevity is the ability to keep buying the players that you want, keep removing the players you don't want, and eventually you end up with a squad that's basically your squad. And what I fear about the next manager is it's a reset again, but it's a bigger pile. With every new manager, the pile of players that you've got to work with or don't want to work with, that don't fit what you want to do, becomes bigger. And therefore the job becomes bigger. So if we did sack Ten Hag, it's not a 3-year job anymore. It's probably a 5-year job. Because you can't say to the next guy, you've got to be successful in the 3-year cycle that we follow all the time. Because he'll go, well, look, you gave Mourinho 3 years and he only had Moyes and Van Gaal players. And you gave him 3 years and then you sacked him. You gave Ollie 3 years, but he had a bigger pile because he had Mourinho, Van Gaal and Moyes players. But you still sacked him after 3 years. Ten Hag comes in, you've only given him 2 years. And yet he's got Van Gaal, Ollie, Mourinho. And then the next manager is probably going to get 2 years. And he's got Ten Hag players on top of that as well. What we should be doing with every new manager is giving them longer, because the job is bigger. So if De Zerbi comes in, for example, and he goes, well, I've got Ten Hag players I don't want to use. I've got Ollie players I don't want to use. There's some Jose players I don't want to use. And there's actually some Van Gaal players I don't want to use. I need my own players. That's going to take time. And in the meantime, I've got to use these players that I want to get rid of. This is a really hard job. And also the fans want me to start playing like this from day one. Look, Ranić had to give up on his style of play after half an hour against Crystal Palace. Ten Hag's never really replicated anything like Ajax, apart from, probably 3 or 4 games in 2 years. So I think it's unfair on the new manager to try and build something in 2 years, because I think the pile of players, and I always use the jigsaw, we have got the pieces to make a jigsaw, but it will never make a picture because they're not from the same jigsaw puzzle. You've got Ollie bits, Jose bits, Ten Hag bits, and obviously the next manager's bits. So I think where we're going wrong here, and I hope INEOS have looked at it, is that the pile of cast-off players from other managers will get bigger if we sack Ten Hag, and a new manager, therefore, will need longer. Because the success of Arteta, quite simply, is an ownership that allowed him to sell whoever he wanted, and then the patience to allow him to bring in the players. And when I think of Arsenal, the 2 things we've never done at this football club that would be really useful is, first of all, having a manager walk in and go, I know you are the best paid player at this football club, and I know you have got this fan base around your finger, but you dropped, fuck off. And even though the fan base reacts badly to it, the club stick by the manager, and it happens. And I'm talking about Aubameyang. Aubameyang was interacting with fan channels. He was doing, very, very close with Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan was very vocal against Arteta on Twitter all the time. Basically, Arteta out. And he got rid of Aubameyang. And a lot of fans were unhappy about it. But the club stuck by him. And they did it with Ozil as well. And it worked really, really well. And I think that that's something that Man United have never done. And I don't know whether we ever will do it. But that's been a fundamental of Arsenal's success. Definitely. And then the second fundamental to Arsenal's success has been patience. Patience to follow through on the plan. Because Arsenal fans were Arteta out very, very vocally. Probably more than the Ten Hag out movement now. I think Arteta out movement at its height was very more vocal and more percentage of the fan base than even what we have with Ten Hag now. They had T-shirts printed. It was Arteta out. And the club stuck to its course and stuck to its plan and was like, yeah, it's difficult now, but we're going to stick with this. And that longevity has worked really, really well for Arsenal, because now that Arteta's been there for 4 years, it's getting better and better by the year, because the toxic elements have gone and the consistency has been maintained and the growth has been maintained, and they're getting better and better by the year. They probably won't win the league this year, but they might win it next year, in which case it's a 5-year plan. So I'm not saying Ten Hag's Arteta. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, when you look at what Arsenal have done, whether it's with this manager or the next manager, it's got to be a 5-year plan, because Arsenal have shown it. And Man City exist. Man City are a juggernaut. If you want to, Arsenal deserve to win the league. They're going to get 89 points. They've conceded the least goals. They've scored the most goals. They've played the best football. They still won't beat Man City. They've still got to go again next year to improve on that. But it's taken Arsenal 5 years. And the great thing is, Ten Hag inherited the worst ever Premier League Man United side. Much the same as what Arteta inherited a terrible Arsenal side as well. So it will take 5 years. So whether you go with a new manager or not, I would implore you to have patience. It can't be 2 years. It can't be 3 years. There's just too much work to be done. If that's the case, we will never be successful because Rashford and Bruno are not Ten Hag players, says Ari. Considering the options, Kieran McKenna would be one. Jay, Ryan, look, you're not the first to mention Kieran McKenna, but I don't think you can give Kieran McKenna the job just because he's got promoted from the Championship. I think he's a really interesting manager for the future, but he's got to manage in the Premier League before you give him the Man United job. I just think it's too big for him. Potter to Ajax shows United not in the market for new coach, says the Snail, but he's not Ajax coach yet. Do you think maybe the next manager might be Pochettino? After all, it's what the owners wanted, says Dan. No. Do you think Amarin is waiting for the United job, says Daily Hibbert? No, I think there's some other reason why he didn't end up at Liverpool. I've been watching you for over 6 years. Great job. I just bought my tickets for Man United versus Palace and Arsenal for the first time travelling from Texas. Keep shining, brother, says Ariel. Well, I hope we can get a result for you there. I really do. Anyway, let's talk about this Mendes story. So this is really interesting because when we talk about the summer transfer window, how United are going to approach this transfer window, you've got to build good relationships. It's a fact that over the last few years, United have been perceived to be a circus in the football industry. Agents, other clubs see us coming with big hair, a big red nose and big clown shoes. So we're perceived to be a circus, and that's why we overpay. And it's not just the clubs, even the agents of players mug us off. So let's take player A, who signs for Man United. Not only does that club get an inflated transfer fee, that player gets inflated wages. So the club mugs us off, and then the agent of the player that's signing for us mugs us off. So look, I think Anthony went from 20 grand a week at Ajax to 200 grand a week at United. So even though Anthony's like, I want to play for Man United, and he does, Anthony's agent still makes a lot of money out of us because we're rubbish at negotiating. So this has to change. And the only way you're going to change that is by talking and building relationships with people. And George Mendes is still considered to be one of the biggest, most powerful agents in football. So much so that even if it's not one of his clients, he often gets brought in to assist on a deal. So apparently Sir Jim Ratcliffe and George Mendes have been talking to each other. This is really interesting because he still has really interesting clients. Basically anything that's Portuguese will have some connection with George Mendes. He used to have Ronaldo. We're not bringing Ronaldo back, don't worry. I think David De Gea used to be his, or I don't think he is now. But I was looking at some of his clients, and look, I'm not saying any of these players are going to come to Manchester United, but look, some of his better clients, Diaz, Silva, both at Man City, Darwin Nunez at Liverpool, Agate at PSG, don't think he's going to be going anywhere. Zaire Emery at PSG, don't think he's going to go anywhere. But then you get on to people like Neto at Wolves. Well, I'm not saying we're going for Neto, but I'm just saying you get onto someone like Neto. Nunez, Man City, of course. Ramos, striker for PSG. Jota, Liverpool. Costa, goalkeeper at Porto. Vitina, PSG. And then you've got a couple of Benfica players. João Neves and Antonio Silva. Baldi at Barcelona. Ruben Neves is playing in Saudi Arabia. Ederson is Man City. Barcola, I can't pronounce his name. PSG, the winger. Is it Barcola or Barcola? Yoro, centre-back at Lille. And Alt-Nouri at Wolves, left-back. So, look, João Felix. There's some your mind can wander with those and that conversation. And look, Sir Jim Ratcliffe may or may not be meeting up with George Mendes for advice on the European scene. He might be sitting down with him and going, you're one of the biggest players in the football transfer world. We want a reputation of elitism like Real Madrid. How would you advise us on that? And it might just be an advisory conversation of, we're not fucking about anymore. We want somebody like yourself to help us with that. How can you help us? It could just be advisory. It could just be a conversation. It could be about Man United regaining a reputation of being a player instead of being played. It could be that. On the other hand, it could be, what do you got? What players have you got? We like Alt-Nouri, he's a left back. We like Barcola. Can we get any of your PSG clients out of there? Are they looking to sell any of them? It could be João Felix. It could be Cancelo. It could be Neto. It could be one of the Benficans, Neves or Silva. Your mind could wander into something really exciting. I don't know, is my point. But what I do think is that these types of conversations are absolutely essential. We have got to rebuild. I mean, rebuild is the word at Man United. Whether it's the squad, whether it's the reputation, whether it's the stadium, reputational rebuild is essential because we haven't got infinite money. And if we've got 100 million quid, we can't spend 100 million pounds of it on one player and wages. We've got to try and get, value for money. And the way to do that is to build your reputation back. And the project of Man United's not that appealing this summer either. Like, it might be no European football, it might be Conference League football, it might be hopefully be Europa League football, but it won't be Champions League football. So Project Man United may not be as appealing to some players as it should be. So it's a very challenging summer, and I think these sort of things are interesting, but I wouldn't run away on the fact that we're going to sign João Neves because we've been talking to Jorge Mendes. I think that is a very, very difficult deal to do. But there may be some deals we can do. I think Neto and Alt-Nouri at Wolves are interesting, especially if Wolves have financial difficulties again where they need to sell. Yeah, just keep it in your back pocket. But we're not just going to be talking to Jorge Mendes as well. We're going to be talking to other people. We can all agree that we have better players than half the league, so why can't we play better football even with the injuries? It says Alex. Alex, why are Chelsea below us and they've spent £1 billion? Why are Newcastle below us and they've got good players as well? I mean, some people will agree with Alex, but I think I don't dismiss the injuries. I think it's a massive thing. We haven't had a left back all season. We haven't got a defence at the moment. I think we've probably got one of the worst defences in the Premier League, and that's why we concede so many chances. Chelsea have had a lot of injuries, and that's their excuse. Why can't it be ours? Newcastle have had a lot of injuries. Why can't it be our excuse? I think 3 teams are massively underperforming this year: Chelsea, Man United, and Newcastle. And I think they've all 3 got very similar issues. I look at Arsenal today, and I can't believe how often they've been able to pick Rice, Odegaard, Saliba, Gabriel, White, Raya this season, and Saka. Like, it's unbelievable. If you are a Chelsea fan or a Newcastle fan or a Man United fan, and you look at how many injuries you've had and how little you've been able to put out your best team, and then you look at someone like Arsenal and how Rice, Saka, Odegaard, Saliba, Gabriel, Raya, White have been fit this season, it's incredible. And it makes a massive difference. If you took Rice, Odegaard and Saliba out of that Arsenal team, as much as Newcastle, Chelsea and Man United have missed key players, they wouldn't be anywhere near the title. People don't like to use injuries as an excuse, but I think it's valid for all 3 clubs. Why do you say Erik ten Hag can't part the bus with the squad to combat injuries? He did it last year and did well. We didn't part the bus last year. What are you talking about, Kea? If we get it wrong, it won't just impact catching up. Villa and Newcastle will take over. Look at the players Newcastle have out, and they're still playing well, says M Stan. They want a new manager, fine, but they're not willing to take the pain along the way to get there, says De Gea United. And if that's the case, we'll never be successful. Okay, we've done that one from Ari as well. Got a few minutes left. I want to just move it on a little bit. We don't dodge any question on here. We don't dodge any topic. We never have. We never will. So the floor is yours. Get your questions in. Ian says get rid of Eric and bring in Carrick. Mendes also represents Jose Mourinho, says Fairway 5. Yeah, we're not going to bring Mourinho in. You just need to go and search Sir Jim Radcliffe's comments about Mourinho. We're not going to do that. Greenwood. Sorry, apologies. Some of you will get excited about this. Some of you will be going, oh my God. Mason Greenwood played well, I think, today. So did Pellistri. Pellistri's goal was really good. Some people, anytime Sancho scores or Greenwood scores, bring them back. That's the world. You can't argue with that. But you don't have to agree with it, but you can't argue with it. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Look, again, it's a bit like Ten Hag. The funny thing is, I have to be careful how I word this. Perception, opinion. We'll word it like this. The general perception is that Ten Hag doesn't want Sancho back. And Sancho doesn't want to play for Ten Hag. That's the general perception, yeah? I think we can all have that opinion. The general perception is that Ten Hag wanted Greenwood back. And, yeah. So, where am I going with this? Well, where I'm going with this is that the player FC of Sancho want him back and they want Ten Hag out. The player FC of Greenwood, you can't say that because Ten Hag wanted, well, the perception is that Ten Hag would have liked Greenwood back last summer. And obviously it didn't happen because of public opinion. So the Greenwood thing is really interesting because if Ten Hag stays, I don't see how Sancho comes back. But if Ten Hag stays, I don't think it has any bearing on the Greenwood conversation. What I'm saying is I don't think a manager change makes Greenwood come back more likely or unlikely, because I think it was pretty... A lot of people feel that... Zhao, thanks for your super chat. I'm happy to remove you and block you. I don't use a burner account, so jog on. You're really thick if you read that as a burner account. I'm not deleting the tweet. It means exactly what I meant. And if you don't understand what it meant, it's not my fault that you're thick. Like, it means exactly what it meant. Ederson fouled him. He went with his hands. The Forest player went with his head. It's a foul. It's a penalty. And that's what it meant. And I'm not deleting it. And if you think it's a burner account, you're really thick. But in relation to Greenwood and Ten Hag, I think with Greenwood coming back, it's completely on INEOS. I don't think it's got anything to do with the manager. The reason I mention that is I saw somebody on That's Football today say that Greenwood will come back if we get a new manager. And I thought, well, I'll keep that to the United stand because I don't think the manager's got anything to do with this. I feel that Ten Hag probably would have liked Greenwood back last summer and he was overruled by a club decision. And I feel that if Ten Hag or a new manager wanted him back this summer, it doesn't really matter what they want, the club will make a decision on it. You know the scary thing though? You know the scary thing is that people need to get their head around the fact that we need to sell players. Like, I saw somebody yesterday saying we shouldn't sell Wan-Bissaka, he's a good backup right back. And the trouble with that is, that's fine, but you can't buy players if you don't sell players. We've probably got about £100 million to spend, and if we want to spend £200 million, we've got to sell £100 million worth of players. And that's not easy if you're going to keep Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, bring Greenwood back. Where's the money? Where are we going to raise this money from? And you've got to start thinking like that. You can ignore it if you want to, but you've got to start thinking like that because that's how INEOS have to think. They have to sell players. If you want to spend 250 million pounds, you better sell 100 to 150 million pounds worth of players. And honestly, I can tell you how to raise that money, but you're not raising it off Varane because he's going for free. You're not raising it off Martial because he's going for free. You're not raising it off Ederson because he'll go for less than 5 million. You're not raising it off Donny because he'll go for less than 5 million. So those 4 players will leave, but they won't raise you any money. If you want to buy 5 or 6 players this summer, you've got to raise at least £100 million in sales. So tell me how you're going to do that, because I don't think McTominay's going anywhere. In fact, I don't think McTominay's going to play again until next season with that knee injury. It looked bad. The way he went down, the way he wanted to come off. McTominay's not that sort of player. You know, he might not be very good, but he's not the sort of player that won't play with a knock. And the fact that he twisted that knee and went down and stayed down, I think it's horrific. I feel really bad for him because whatever you think about him as a Man United player, he deserves to be in the Euros with Scotland, and they might not get there again. And if he's done his knee, then he ain't going to the Euros, and he ain't going anywhere this summer because he's injured. So that's 30 million gone. I don't think they were selling McTominay anyway. I was told a few weeks ago, Rashford, Bruno, McTominay, no chance. But even if they were, he's not going anywhere. So that's 30 million, homegrown player. Forget about it, gone. He's staying. So where are we raising this money then? Well, Wan-Bissaka might bring you 25 million in, but you've got to sell him. You've got to sell Wan-Bissaka to do that. Some people don't want to do it. Harry Maguire might bring you 25 million in, but a lot of people saying don't do it anymore. So that's 50 you might not take. Greenwood's 35. A lot of people are saying bring him back. That's pure profit. That's 85. After that, Casemiro to Saudi might bring you 20. There's your 100 million, but that's it. I can't see where else we're raising any money from. And a lot of people are saying, don't get rid of Wan-Bissaka. Don't get rid of Maguire. Bring Greenwood back. So you've got 20 million from Casemiro to Saudi. Shit, that ain't enough. We've got to raise money. I don't know where we're raising this money at the moment. I don't know. We have to raise money, and I don't know where we're going to raise it. So let's keep Maguire, let's keep Wan-Bissaka, let's bring Greenwood back, but we're probably going to buy one player because that's all we'll have the money for, maybe two. So we need to raise money. We've got to sell players. I mean, Lamb says sell Rashford. No one wants to buy Rashford anyway, and he's not for sale. Varane's wages will raise you about 10 million, mate. And obviously those wages will go on new players. So wages aren't that good. I mean, it raises a good point. I don't really know where we're going to raise the money from this summer anymore. My feeling was 30 for McTominay, 25 for Maguire, 35 for Greenwood, and then you've got, what, 90. Casemiro's 20, 110. You know, you probably raise another 10, 15 from Williams and Mabry and Donny. You eke your way up to 150 million quid. But with McTominay injured, and, you know, it comes down very, very quickly. And, yeah. We're apparently interested in Barcelona's Araujo. I don't know how, mate. He won't be cheap. Look, on centre-backs, Todibo and Branthwaite are the top two. I would say that, and you might not like it, but I would say keep an eye on the Palace centre-back, Guehi. I just have a feeling around that. I think a lot of it adds up. And maybe Elise is a smokescreen for him. I don't know, but I would keep an eye on that. He's also homegrown as well. It all comes down to selling Rashford. That would raise the funds, but he's holding this club hostage behind the scenes, says Nikhil. I don't think we're looking to sell Rashford. I saw enough of Wan-Bissaka to get rid of him and get Frimpong in, says Ronnie. Simon Evans, thank you very much. Pip says, how bad is the stat from yesterday? Most passes to Højlund were from Anana, says Pip. And Lee Cape Town says, I just can't get my head around how we wasted transfer fees on Onana and Mount. Could have gotten Rice instead. Totally gutted at that decision. Well, let's hope they both come good. Ian says, I think Ten Hag's transfers have been awful. Martinez has been excellent. I disagree. I disagree on that. But, you know, we're all entitled to an opinion, aren't we? Anyway, fantastic show tonight. Start of another week tomorrow. What will it bring with Man United? We've got absolutely no idea, but I'm sure there'll be something. Yeah, we'll see what it brings. Challenging times at the moment. These are the same players we were talking about selling last summer. I think we'll be disappointed again, says Zane. Look, I'm not individualising it, but if we don't have a clear out, then how do you expect... Look, what's the saying? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And look, using the same players season after season and expecting a different outcome is basically the definition of insanity in a footballing sense, isn't it? Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. Stay safe. Thanks for all your comments and your opinion. As always, it's all welcome. And we'll see you tomorrow on the 10 o'clock show. 8 o'clock show tomorrow night as normal. Yeah, there's no football. And yeah, we'll have some stuff for you throughout the week as well. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. I'll speak to you all in a bit.